For generations, scientists have wrestled with the idea of creating new forms of life in the laboratory. Now that age is upon us. The latest milestone occurred this summer when the microbiologist J. Craig Venter announced that a team of his scientists had created a synthetic bacteria designed on a computer with man-made DNA. The announcement was greeted with a mixture of praise, skepticism, and rancor, which is familiar territory for Venter. He's one of the most famous scientists in the world, known for his pioneering work in deciphering the human genetic code. But he's also one of the most controversial, an iconoclast with a brilliant mind and an outsized ego who has flaunted the conventional wisdom and tweaked the staid scientific establishment at every turn. You don't have to spend much time with Craig Venter to understand that he likes to go fast. He's an adrenaline junkie whose willingness to take big risks has led to bold scientific breakthroughs, and he's not exactly shy about touting those accomplishments. Where would you rank yourself in terms of scientific accomplishments?
Well, in the field of genomics, I think the record is pretty clear-cut. So the first genome in history, the first draft of the human genome, the first complete version of the human genome, and having the first synthetic cells.
So the answer to the question is pretty high.
I mean, it's really hard to assess that yourself, but I think the teams that we have and what we've accomplished are certainly amongst the biggest discoveries in modern science.
What do you think your greatest talent is?
You know, I have an unusual type of thinking. I have no visual memory whatsoever. Everything is conceptual to me. So I think that's part of it. I see things differently.
Venter likes to think big, and his latest advancement is no exception.
So this is what all the fuss is about.
This is the first synthetic species.
And how long did it take you to make this?
Well, if you count the total time from the conception, about 15 years.
And how many millions?
About $40 million over that entire time period.
In practical terms, it's about as useful as the mold that grows in a bachelor's refrigerator. But scientifically, it's a milestone. The bacteria, which is similar to one found in the intestines of goats, was designed on a computer, manufactured in the laboratory, and gets its genetic instructions from a synthetic chromosome made by man, not nature.
And it's alive?
It's alive and self-replicating. It means it can indefinitely grow and make copies of itself.
Did you design this to do anything in particular?
No. We designed this just to see if we could do this whole experiment using synthetic DNA. And now that we know we can do it, it's worth the effort to now make the things that could be valuable.
Just how valuable remains to be seen, but Venter believes this is the first baby step in a biological revolution, one in which it will be possible to custom design and reprogram bacteria and other organisms to churn out new medicines, foods, and clean sources of energy.
What you're doing is programming cells, like somebody would program software.
DNA is the software of life. There's no question about it. And the key to evolution of life on this planet, and now the key to the future of life on this planet, is understanding how to write that software.
So you see bioengineered fuel, for example?
I see in the future bioengineered almost everything you can imagine that we use.
How far off is some of this?
The first things will start to come out in the next few years. I think possibly next year's flu vaccine could come from these synthetic DNA processes. Instead of months to make a new vaccine each year, we could do it in 24 hours or less.
This is a quote from one of your critics. He's trying to short-circuit millions of years of evolution and create his own version of the second Genesis. It's the height of hubris. It's irresponsible. And he can't tell you it's going to be safe.
Except for the second part, I was taking that as a compliment. I can tell you what we're doing is safe. There's no way that I can guarantee that other people that use these tools will do intelligent, safe experiments with it. But I think the chance of evil happening with this and somebody even trying to do deliberate evil would be pretty hard.
Why?
Because of the complexity of biology. We're not working with human pathogens. We're working with algae cells. And part of our design is cells that won't survive outside of a facility or a laboratory. And we think other scientists will adopt these same approaches.
There are some things that concern you about this.
Oh, it is powerful technology. It's something that needs to be monitored, absolutely.
President Obama was concerned enough to ask his Commission on Bioethics to hold hearings on Venter's new technology shortly after the results were published in the journal Science. Apart from the legal and regulatory questions raised, there are some moral and ethical ones as well.
There are a lot of people in this country who don't think that you ought to screw around with nature.
We don't have too many choices now. We are a society that is 100% dependent on science. We're going to go up in our population in the next 40 years. We can't deal with the population we have without destroying our environment.
But aren't you playing God?
We're not playing anything. We're understanding the rules of life.
But that's more than studying life. That's changing life.
Well, domesticating animals was changing life. Domesticating corn. When you do crossbreeding of plants, you're doing this blind experiment where you're just mixing DNA of different types of cells and just seeing what comes out of it.
This is a little different, though. This is another step, isn't it?
Yeah, now we're doing it in a deliberate design fashion with tiny bacteria. I think it's much healthier to do it based on some knowledge and a better understanding of life than to do it blindly and randomly.
You know, I've asked you 2 or 3 times, do you think you're playing God? I mean, do you believe in God?
No. I believe the universe is far more wonderful than just assuming it was made by some higher power. I think the fact that these cells are software-driven machines, and that software is DNA, and that's truly the secret of life, is writing software, is pretty miraculous. Just seeing that process in the simplest forms that we're just witnessing is pretty stunning.